You know that moment when you realize everything you've been told about yourself is a lie. 6 months ago, my family gathered around our kitchen table like vultures waiting for roadkill. My mother's obituary was barely cold, and they were already counting her assets. My sister, who I'd protected from bullies, who'd cried on my shoulder after every heartbreak, who'd I've loved unconditionally for 28 years, stood there with her lawyer and said these exact words. Mum always said Jessica was the family mistake. Deep breath. In that moment, I could have crumbled. I could have cried. I could have walked away and let them have everything, just like they'd always expected me to. Instead, I smiled, because what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that their failed daughter had just signed a deal worth $47 million the week before Mom's funeral. This is the story of how I went from the disappointment to the woman who bought back my family home and auctioned it to strangers. And trust me, the ending is sweeter than they ever imagined. If you've ever felt underestimated by the people who should love you most, if you've ever wanted to watch karma work its magic in real time, then this story will give you everything you're looking for. Hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell, because what you're about to hear will make you want to stand up and cheer. Let me paint you a picture of exactly who I was to them. My name is Jessica Morrison, and I was born the middle child in a family that adored my older brother Michael and doted on my younger sister Valerie. While Mike got praised for his baseball scholarship and Val got celebrated for her beauty pageant wins, I got labelled as the practical one. The practical one. Translation, the one who was supposed to be grateful for scraps of attention while everyone else shone. My mother, Gloria Morrison, was a former model turned real estate mogul. She built an empire from nothing, literally nothing, and she was damn proud of it. But somewhere along the way, she decided I wasn't ambitious enough to inherit her business brain. Mike was going to be the lawyer who protected the empire. Val was going to be the public face who charmed the clients. And me? I was going to be the family accountant, the reliable one, the backup. At 19, when I announced I wanted to study computer science instead of business administration, my mother literally laughed. Not a gentle chuckle, full-on belly-deep laughter. "Jessica, honey, you can barely figure out how to work your phone's camera filter," she said, still giggling. "You want to code, for real?" That moment, standing in our kitchen with flour on my apron from helping Val practice her baking, I felt something die in my chest. But I didn't argue. I never did. I just packed my bags and headed to state school instead of the private university they'd already pre-enrolled Mike and Val in. Here's what nobody talks about when you're the disappointment in a family of overachievers. Your achievements don't count. Your struggles don't matter. Your existence becomes background noise while everyone else plays the starring role. I spent 4 years at State Tech, working 3 part-time jobs to pay for school while my parents casually threw money at Val's exploring my creative phase and Mike's finding himself semester in Europe. I graduated with honours, summa cum laude actually, but my mother's response was a distracted, "That's nice, honey," while she planned Val's debutante ball. Meanwhile, Val had cycled through 3 majors, failed 2 courses, and partied her way through a sorority, but somehow she was still golden, still the princess, still the one who got tucked into bed with a kiss goodnight when I was 23 and crying over my first real heartbreak. "You'll find someone better, Jess," Mum had said, not looking up from Val's college application that she was filling out for the 4th time. "You're just too serious. Men want fun girls, not girls like you." "Like me?" I'd asked, my voice smaller than I felt. "You know, reliable, stable. It's a good quality, just—" She'd finally looked up, her expression softening. "Just not very exciting." That night, I launched my first app, a simple budgeting tool that nobody downloaded except me and about 30 other college students. But it worked, and it worked well. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I hadn't felt around my family in years. Purpose. While they were planning their futures, I was building mine. You know what's funny about being the invisible child? People forget you exist, which gives you the perfect opportunity to observe everything. I watched Val use my mother's influence to get internships at companies where the executives knew Mum's name. I watched Mike coast through law school while Mum donated enough money to the university to name a building after her. I watched them both treat my mother's wealth like their birthright, like it had always been there, like nothing had ever been sacrificed to build it. Meanwhile, I was coding in coffee shops, eating ramen noodles, and slowly building my portfolio. My little budgeting app grew into a personal finance management system, then into something bigger. I never told my family what I was working on, not because I was hiding it, but because I knew what they'd say. Focus on finding a real job, Jess. That's nice for a hobby, but you need stability. Don't quit your day job. Literally, don't quit your day job. So I didn't tell them when my app got featured in TechCrunch. I didn't tell them when I started getting acquisition offers. I didn't tell them when I founded my own company, when I hired my first employees, when I moved into my own apartment in Silicon Valley. I especially didn't tell them about the night I cried in my car after signing a letter of intent that could change my life forever. A 7-figure acquisition that would set me up for life, but required me to give up my company. It was everything I dreamed of, but it meant saying goodbye to my creation. I called my mother that night, desperate for her to finally see me, finally understand what I'd accomplished. That's great, honey, she'd said, but I could hear Val in the background asking about shoes. But what about benefits? Health insurance? You'll need to think about the future, Jessica. You can't live on apps forever. Mum, this is 7 figures. I could buy our family home with... That's nice, sweetie. Listen, I've got to go. Val's trying on dresses for the fundraiser tomorrow and she needs my opinion. You're doing great, honey. Keep us posted. Click. I sat in that parking garage for 2 hours, staring at my phone, realizing that no matter what I accomplished, I would always be the reliable one, the safe choice, the backup option. That's when the plan started forming. Not revenge, not yet, but a determination to finally prove them wrong. To show them that the daughter they'd overlooked had been building an empire while they weren't looking. November 2024. Mum's health started declining. The irony wasn't lost on me that as my mother's body was failing, her business empire was thriving. Val had finally decided to help by getting a degree in business administration. Apparently, our mother's genes had finally kicked in, and she was already talking about taking over the company. Mum trusts me with the important things, Val announced at Thanksgiving, while I carved the turkey I'd driven 2 hours to prepare. Jessica's great with numbers and organising events, but we both know I'm the people person in this family. I'd smiled and nodded, thinking about my employee count, my bank account, my client roster that included Fortune 500 companies. But I kept quiet. I'd learned silence was safer than disappointment. Mum's final months were difficult. She oscillated between her sharp business mind and moments of profound confusion. During one particularly clear afternoon, she called me to her bedside and grasped my hand with surprising strength. "You know, don't you?" she'd whispered. "You know how proud I am of you." I'd blinked back tears, squeezing her hand. "I just wanted you to be happy with me, Mom." "Happy." She'd laughed, a sound as bitter as autumn leaves. "Jessica, I've been terrified you'd outshine us all and make us look like pretenders to the throne. You've been building something while we've been playing house." "Mom, promise me something." Her grip had tightened. "Promise me you won't let them diminish what you've accomplished. Promise me you'll make them see." I'd promised. I just hadn't expected the context of that promise to arrive so quickly. December 15th, 2024. The day everything changed. My mother died on a Tuesday. Snow was falling, the kind of wet, heavy snow that clings to everything and makes the world feel muffled and distant. I'd gotten the call at 3:47 a.m., and by 4:15 I was in my car, driving through the storm to get home. I thought I was prepared for grief. I'd been preparing for this conversation for months, trying to find the right words to say everything I needed to say while I still could. But when I walked into the house and saw Val sitting at our mother's desk, going through paperwork like she was shopping for shoes, something cold settled in my chest. "Jess!" Val had looked up, her makeup perfect despite the hour. "I'm so glad you're here. We need to talk about the funeral arrangements and the will and can't it wait until morning?" I'd asked, still in my coat, still frozen from the drive. "It can't wait, actually." She'd stood up, smoothing down her black dress. Designer black, I noticed, while I'd thrown on whatever was clean. "Mom made some decisions about the business, about the house, about, well, everything." The cold feeling spread. "What kind of decisions?" Val had smiled, and it wasn't her usual bright smile. This one was calculated, sharp. The kind that makes sense, given the family dynamics. That's when she'd handed me a manila folder thick enough to hurt when it hit the desk. "She loved you, Jess. We all do. But you have to understand, this family has always been about legacy, about continuing what she built. And frankly," she'd tilted her head, studying me like I was a particularly uninteresting piece of art. "Frankly, you were never really part of that equation." I'd opened the folder with shaking hands. Wills, trusts, business documents, property deeds. A lifetime of my mother's carefully built empire, neatly packaged and presented to someone else. "Val got everything," the lawyer explained, his voice gentle but clinical. "The house, the business, the life insurance, the jewelry collection, even the cars. You've been left a small trust fund and some personal items." I'd stared at the papers, understanding flooding through me like ice water. "How small?" $30,000, Val had answered before the lawyer could speak. "For your trouble staying in our lives." My trouble. That's what Mum wanted," Val had said, suddenly looking less confident. "Mum wanted me to disappear," I'd said, still chuckling. "She wanted me to be grateful for $30,000 for 28 years of love and support and what did you call it? My trouble staying in your lives." I'd stood up slowly, folding the papers back into the folder with deliberate care. "You know what's funny, Val? $30,000. "Yes?" "That's what I made in passive income last Tuesday alone. Let me tell you what $47 million looks like when it's written on a contract." The silence that followed was perfect, utter, the kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat and the snow falling outside and the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. "I'm sorry?" Mike had finally managed. $47 million, I'd repeated, walking to the window and looking out at the snow that was now blanketing my mother's rose garden. "That's what my company was worth when I sold it 6 months ago, before Mom died. Before any of this." I'd turned back to face them, enjoying the way Val's perfectly applied foundation couldn't hide the flush creeping up her neck. "But you work at..." Val had started, then stopped. "I work at a company," I'd finished for her. $47 million company that employs 237 people. That has offices in San Francisco, Austin, New York, and London. That processes over $2 billion in transactions annually. I'd pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and set it on the desk where they could all see. The numbers didn't lie. Current balance, $12,847,392.17. 17, I'd said softly. Cents. Val had actually taken a step backward. That's impossible." "Is it?" I'd asked, genuinely curious. "When was the last time any of you asked me what I did for a living? When was the last time you visited my apartment, saw my car, met anyone I worked with? When was the last time you cared about anything I accomplished, unless it directly benefited one of you?" I'd watched the expressions on their faces shift from confusion to disbelief to something that might have been panic. "You can't just," Mike had started, Just what? Just refuse to be your family's charity case. Just refuse to accept that I'm worthless unless I prove otherwise. Is that what you're trying to say? I'd picked up the manila folder, weighing it in my hands. You know what's ironic? This entire estate isn't worth what I make in 6 months. The house, the business, the jewellery, all of it. Maybe 15 million total if you're lucky with the market. The lawyer had cleared his throat nervously. Miss Morrison, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. The word had come out sharper than I'd intended. No, I think we should all hear this. After all, this is about family legacy, isn't it? About continuing what Mom built. I'd walked over to the fireplace, where a photo of us as children sat, Mike and Val grinning at the camera, while I stood slightly to the side, already learning to make myself smaller. Mum built a real estate empire, I'd continued. She started with nothing and created something that could provide for her family for generations. But she also taught me something she never intended to teach me. I'd turned to face them again, and I could see the exact moment when Val realised this wasn't going the way she'd planned. She taught me that if you want something done right, sometimes you have to do it yourself. Here's where the story gets interesting because I didn't just reveal my financial situation and walk away. I had a plan. You want to know what I'm going to do? I'd asked, my voice now deadly quiet. I'm going to give you exactly what you want. Val had leaned forward, hope flickering in her eyes. You mean you'll accept I'm going to buy back this house? The room had gone silent again, but this time it was the kind of silence that comes before lightning strikes. I'm sorry, Val had whispered. This house, the family home, Mum's pride and joy, I'm going to buy it from you. I'd smiled, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to make them comfortable with my expression. At market value, of course, probably around $8 million given the location and recent renovations. Mike had stood up, his lawyer instincts finally kicking in. You can't just... Why not? I'd asked, genuinely curious. Is there something in Mom's will that prevents me from purchasing family assets? Some clause about keeping it in the family? The lawyer had shuffled through his papers frantically. No, there's nothing that would prevent a purchase between willing parties. Excellent. I'd pulled out my phone and started typing. Let me make a call. I know a team of real estate lawyers and another team of appraisers. We can have the paperwork drawn up by tomorrow. Jessica, wait, Val had said, her voice climbing an octave. You can't just buy our childhood home out from under us. Can't I? I'd looked up from my phone. Why not? It's just a house, right? Just property. Mum's will gave it to you and now you can sell it to me. It's a free market economy, isn't it? I'd walked over to the desk and picked up a pen. The same pen Mum used to sign important documents. The same pen she'd used to write the will that left me with $30,000 for my trouble. But here's the best part, I'd continued. I'm not buying it to live in. I'm buying it to sell. And I'm not selling to anyone who just wants a house. I'd clicked the pen, that familiar sound sharp in the silence. I'm selling to developers, housing developers who want to tear it down and build condos. The gasp from Val had been audible. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? I'd asked, tapping the pen against my palm. It's just property, right? Just a building. You're not attached to it emotionally, are you? You said yourself that you and Mike are going to be too busy running the family business to live in some old house anyway. I'd turned to the lawyer. How long would it take to get a purchase agreement finalised? Typically, with all parties cooperating, we could have preliminary paperwork within 24 hours, he'd said carefully. Perfect. I'll have my lawyers contact you first thing tomorrow. I'd put the pen down and gathered my things, my purse, my phone, the folder with all the documents that officially made Val the heir to my mother's empire. Oh, and one more thing, I'd added, pausing at the door. The $30,000, keep it. Buy yourself something pretty with it. You know what they don't tell you about revenge? It's not about making them hurt. It's about making them understand. I drove back to Silicon Valley that night, stopping at a diner in Nevada to call my real estate attorney and start the wheels in motion. By morning, Val's phone was ringing with calls from appraisers, inspectors, and lawyers who spoke in terms of millions of dollars and closing dates. The funny thing is, I didn't actually want to destroy the house. Despite everything, despite the way my family had treated me, that house was where I'd learned to code on my laptop while everyone else watched movies in the living room. It was where I'd celebrated my first successful app download. It was where I'd cried myself to sleep after every family gathering that made me feel invisible. But I also knew Val. She'd been born with a silver spoon in her mouth and never learned the value of anything that came easy. She was going to be furious about the sale, but she was also going to be tempted by $8 million in cash. My phone rang at 11:47 a.m. the next day. Val. Jessica, we need to talk. We are talking, I'd replied, not looking up from the contract I was reviewing. The buyers are very interested. They want to break ground by spring. That's not what I mean, and you know it. I'd put the contract down and leaned back in my chair, looking out at the San Francisco Bay. Then what do you mean, Val? Come home, please. Let's figure this out like family. Like family? I'd repeated the words slowly. You mean like the way you figured out that Mums will left me $30,000 for my trouble staying in your lives? Silence. You know what the difference is between us, Val. You see money as something you inherit. I see it as something you earn. And right now, I'm earning more in a month than your entire inheritance is worth. Jess, I'm going to give you one chance to make this right. What do you want? I'd smiled, though she couldn't see me. I want you to understand something. I want you to understand what you threw away when you decided I was invisible. And I want you to remember this moment every time you try to diminish someone else's accomplishments. What do you want? She'd repeated, her voice smaller now. I want you to call me and admit that your entire adult life, you've counted on me being the easy one, the reliable one, the one who would always forgive you and come running when you needed me. Jess, I want you to say out loud that you've never respected me, never valued me, never believed I was capable of more than being your backup plan. Fine, okay? You've always been the backup. You've always been the safe choice. Is that what you want to hear? I'd closed my eyes, feeling something loosen in my chest. Not relief, nothing that kind. It was more like the moment you realize a splinter has finally worked its way to the surface and you can pull it out. That's what I needed to hear, I'd said quietly. Thank you. Sometimes the best revenge is showing your former tormentors exactly who you've become. The legal battle lasted 3 months, but not the way Val expected. I didn't fight the will or try to contest anything. Instead, I simply executed my plan with methodical precision. The appraisal came back at $8.7 million. The developers were enthusiastic about the location and willing to pay cash, closing within 30 days. Val tried to find other buyers, but nobody else was willing to meet my offer, and honestly, nobody else would have been willing to work with the tight timeline I insisted on. Just sell it to me, I'd told her during one of our increasingly heated phone calls. Take the money and run your family business. You'll have more cash than you've ever had in your life. I don't want your dirty money, she'd spit. My money is cleaner than anything you've ever touched. I've earned every penny through honest work, innovation, and creating something valuable for the world. What's dirty about that? I'd heard her breathing hard on the other end of the line. Besides, I'd continued, Mum's money isn't dirty either, is it? You didn't seem to have any problem accepting that when you thought it was all going to you. The closing was scheduled for March 15th, 6 months to the day after Mum's funeral. I was in the lawyer's office early, reviewing the final documents while Val arrived fashionably late with her own attorney. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect makeup couldn't hide the stress lines around her eyes, and her designer suit seemed to hang on her body like it was too heavy to carry. Congratulations, she'd said quietly as I signed the final papers. Thank you. I'd signed my name one more time, then looked up at her. I hope you use your windfall wisely. The money isn't going to make me happy, she'd replied. Is that what this is about? Happiness? I'd tilted my head, studying her. Val, you had everything. Parents who adored you, a brother who supported you, a mother who believed you could do anything. You had me too, though apparently that was just my trouble staying in your life. You had love, security, opportunity. The money was just the cherry on top. Her eyes had filled with tears, but I hadn't felt sorry for her. Not yet. What you didn't have, I'd continued, was respect for the people who gave you all of that. And now you'll have to live with the knowledge that when it mattered most, when you had a chance to prove you were more than just a pretty face with family connections, you chose to diminish someone who loved you. But here's the real kicker, the part that made the entire thing worth it. I didn't tear down the house. Instead, I turned it into something my mother would have loved, a community centre focused on helping young women in tech. The Jessica Morrison Centre for Emerging Leaders offers free coding classes, startup incubators, and mentorship programs. The irony wasn't lost on me that Val had sold me the house that now bears my name. The opening ceremony was 6 months after the sale. The local news covered it, naturally, and somehow Val found out about it. She showed up on a Tuesday afternoon, standing outside the freshly painted sign with its bold letters announcing the centre's name. You named it after yourself, she'd said when I approached. I named it after my mother, I'd replied. Jessica Morrison was her name too. She'd looked at me for a long moment, and I could see something in her expression I hadn't seen since we were children, uncertainty. Mum would be proud, she'd finally said. Yes, I'd agreed. She would. We stood there in silence for a moment, looking at the house that had been my childhood prison and was now my tribute to everything my mother had taught me about building something from nothing. I'm sorry, Val had whispered. For what? For not seeing you, for not believing in you, for making you feel invisible when you were the most important person in our family. I'd turned to look at her then, really look at her, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than anger or satisfaction. I never wanted to hurt you, I'd said. I wanted you to see me, really see me. I see you now, she'd replied. Good. I'd smiled, and it felt genuine. Because this centre is going to help young women who were just like me, brilliant, capable, but dismissed because they don't fit into someone else's idea of what success looks like. I gestured toward the building behind us. That house is going to help them avoid spending 28 years trying to prove they're worthy of love. The moment you all wanted to hear about. Val's face had crumpled then, and she'd started crying. Real tears, not the careful, beautiful tears she'd practiced in front of mirrors for school plays and pageants. These were tears of genuine remorse and recognition. I was so jealous of you, she'd admitted. You were always so real, so confident in your own skin. I felt like I had to perform to be loved, but you just existed and everyone adored you. I'd stared at her, feeling my own eyes well up. Val, nobody adored me. I was the reliable one, remember? The backup, the safety net. No, she'd shaken her head violently. You were the smart one, the talented one. Mum talked about your apps all the time, you know. She was proud of you, even if she didn't know how to show it. The words hit me like a physical blow, and suddenly I was crying too, standing in the parking lot of my own community centre, realising that maybe, just maybe, the entire family had been more complicated than I'd allowed myself to believe. We both made mistakes, I'd said finally. Yeah, but yours didn't cost anyone their home, she'd replied with a watery laugh. Actually, I'd said, pulling out my phone, about that. I'd shown her the architectural plans displayed on my screen, blueprints for a small apartment building to be built on a corner lot I owned 3 blocks away. It's a 4-unit building, I'd explained. Each unit is 2 bedrooms, perfect for a family, and they're income restricted, so young families can afford them. Val had stared at the plans, confusion written across her face. What does this have to do with, I want you to manage it? The silence stretched between us like a bridge. Neither of us was sure we were ready to cross. "I want you to manage it," I'd repeated. "The building, the residents, the community relationships. You have people skills, Val. You know how to make connections, how to solve problems, how to see the best in people. Those are real talents." "You're giving me a job?" "I'm offering you a partnership," I'd corrected. 50-50 on the project, with you handling the day-to-day management. You'll learn the business from the ground up, and I'll handle the tech and financial side. Val had looked from my phone to my face and back again. "Why would you do that?" "Because," I'd said, "revenge isn't about making someone pay. It's about creating the conditions for justice to happen naturally, and because I miss my sister. And that brings us to where we are today." 6 months later, the Morrison Community Centre has helped 43 young women start their own businesses. Val's building is fully occupied, and she's been named Developer of the Year by the local housing authority. But more importantly, we talk every week. Real conversations, not the careful, performative family banter that used to pass for communication. She's learning to code. Really code, not just Instagram stories, and I've learned to ask for help when I need it. The house still stands, but it's no longer a monument to family dysfunction. It's a monument to family healing, to the power of proving people wrong in a way that ultimately makes everyone better. My mother would be proud. That, my friends, is how you handle family revenge. Not by destroying people, but by becoming so successful that they have no choice but to see you clearly. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed or imagined? And subscribe for more stories where justice isn't just served, it's reimagined entirely.